Steve, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to come into your home. This is a great place.
Well, thank you very much. We really enjoy having people here, and it's a wonderful place to visit and to record. And Don's been here a time or two.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
And the victuals are pretty good too.
Oh, they're excellent.
You know, I think that gets mentioned in every video. So, you know, I am so glad that you made yourself known to me and introduced yourself to me online. We were fans of yours in a way before I ever even met you. And my kids grew up watching you, and I had no idea.
I appreciate that.
But a common link that you two have is Roy Rogers. So how did you meet Roy?
I got lucky and was cast in a show called His Waiting Wildcats. And just wound up, showing up at the old Iverson Movie Ranch, which I live there, by the way, now. I have for about 15 years. Right by the Garden of the Gods and Outlaw Pass and Nyoka Cliffs, right in my backyard. And I was just hired just as any other, teenage actor. And after a couple of days, I kept on seeing this young gal kind of looking and watching, and eventually she came over and introduced herself. Her name was Cheryl. I said, "Hi, I'm Steve." And I said, "I've seen you around. You got something to do with this show?" And she says, "Yeah." She says, my parents work on it. I said, "They do?" "Well, I'm thinking makeup, wardrobe." I said, "Well, what do they do?" She says, "Oh, there they are over there having lunch." She points to Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. I almost fell over. Speaking of being humble. And we hit it off, and the next day she invited me over to the ranch, which is just down the block, about a quarter of a mile, overlooking the Chatsworth Cemetery. And I was like the kid that came to dinner and never left. Just got to hang out there and hang out with Roy and Dale, and got involved in the Hollywood Christian group that Dale and Roy Rogers and Jane Russell started, non-denominational organization that folks in show business go ahead and find places to pray without being hounded for autographs and stuff. It started out at their ranch and got really big and wound up at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. But it got so big, he winds up inviting Audie Murphy to one of the meetings.
Now, did you know Audie?
I didn't know him. I did after that night. Found out later he always carried 3 guns.
3 guns.
And somebody started to hound him for his autograph. He decided to start shooting up the roof over at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. That was the end of the Hollywood Christian group at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. Got a little smaller, went back to the Double R Ranch in Chatsworth.
So were you there that night?
I was there. I saw it.
Oh my gosh.
I was the first one to duck. I knew a gunshot when I heard one. Another Roy Rogers story. I'm out at the ranch one day, and it's the middle of summer, Chatsworth, about 110 degrees. And Roy comes in, he says, "Hey, Steve, come with me. Let's go digging." I don't know what he's talking about, but Roy Rogers wants you to go digging.
You go digging no matter what it is.
I mean, that was my idol hero. He wanted me to hang out with him. And so we go outside, go to the garage, says, "Grab that shovel, grab that axe." "Yes, sir." And believe it or not, it was like a part of an episode. Right there in the garage was Nellie Bell, the Jeep. And we load up the back of that thing, and he whistles, and here comes Bullet. And I can't believe it. I feel like I'm back doing an episode. Where's the cameras, right? And Bullet jumps in the back, and here we go. And Roy's ranch is 180 acres, overlooking the Chatsworth Cemetery and almost the whole valley there. pulls up on top of this hill. We get to the top of this hill, and he says, "Okay, let's go digging." Okay. He takes off his shirt. He's all ready. Boy, I didn't realize what a build that this man had. I mean, he was a stocky son of a gun. And so he said, "Why don't you go dig over there?" And I'm looking, and there's a hole over there and a hole over there, and there's hundreds of holes. It's like Godzilla Acre, just all over the place. I said, "Oh, okay." And so I'm digging, and Bowen Smart went under Nellie Bell because that was the only shade around. Roy's out there with an axe, and he's hitting it, and he's digging. And half an hour later, I'm spent. Okay. And I just figured I got to get up enough guts. I got to ask Roy, just in case, right? So I go, "Hey, Roy," he says, "What?" I said, "Just in case I find it, what are we looking for?" He says, "Joaquin Murrieta's gold." I said, "What?" He says, "Joaquin Murrieta's gold. When I bought this place, the real estate lady told me that this was his last hideout. When he got arrested and hung, they never found that treasure. I know it's here." Okay, here I'm a digging. Roy wants me to dig in case I find it. True story.
So did you find it?
Nope. Nope. I don't think they ever found it, but he believed it was there. He was going to find it.
So how did you two not ever end up? You've never met.
Different time zones.
Different time periods there, huh?
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely.
I was a little earlier than him.
He's younger than I am. You know, I'm from the old crowd. He's from the younger crowd, so we kind of never met.
Yeah, I met Roy in New York City in 1943, and they wouldn't let me perform in the rodeo, which I was supposed to do, because of the child labor law. And my dad couldn't read or write very good, so he didn't want to fill out the reports every day and get me permission from the child labor law so I could work. So he just said it wasn't worth it. But in the mornings, Roy would rehearse on one end of the arena with Trigger, and I would rehearse on the other end of the arena with my Shetland ponies. And I would trick ride, and I would do my trick roping act, and I would do my Shetland pony act. And at the same time, Roy was doing practicing with Trigger, and Glenn Randall was the trainer of Trigger. And
So Glenn was there too?
Glenn was there too.
Okay.
He was he took care of Trigger.
How old were you, Don?
I was 6, and this was in 1943. So anyway, he saw me performing, and he told my father that if he would bring me to California, he would put me in the movies as Little Beaver. So that was in October. Well,
Red Ryder was a big thing back then at that time.
And that was in October. In December, we were in California, and we went down to Republic Studios, and I was only this tall, and they said, "Oh no, you're way too small." So I didn't get that part. But I did a movie with Roy, and then I did one with Eddie Dean, and another one with Roy, and then one with Gene Autry, and then one with Robert Mitchum, and another one with Gene Autry. And anyway, I wound up doing, I did 3 movies with Charles Starrett, the Durango Kid. Glenn Randall and my dad became very good friends, and when we first came to California, we lived with them. Lynn Randall, Glenn's wife, she started me in school. Otherwise, I'd have never began school.
No, what school was that?
Satakoy.
What school did you go to out there?
I wound up at Hollywood Professional School. I went to Hollywood High and then Hollywood Professional, because Hollywood High didn't really, I know it sounds interesting right in the middle of Hollywood, but they didn't quite understand when kids were working a lot, with assignments and stuff like that. So there's a school called Hollywood Professional School where you only went 4 hours a day. They didn't have gym and they didn't have shop. And so you just did the main courses, and therefore you were available then for interviews and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. So, and you never went to that school?
No,
Okay.
I went to public schools all the way through.
But the school you were going to, you went to school with Lana Wood?
No, that was junior high school.
Oh, okay. All right.
I went with Natalie.
Natalie.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Lana was a couple of years behind her. So
Okay.
she was at my school for about 2 weeks. because they were doing repairs on her school, which was about 3 blocks from there. And so she went to my school for about 3 weeks, and then they got their school fixed, and so she went back over there. So I never really met Lana until later. But Natalie and I was in the same class.
You had another story. You worked with Casey Tibbs,
Oh, yeah.
and you were telling us about a thing between a story about Casey and Roy Rogers. Tell me that whole story.
Okay. Casey Tibbs was the greatest practical joker of all times, and some of it wasn't really all that funny. Okay, except to Casey. I mean, real quick, I'll get into the Roy Rogers story, but like he'll get into an elevator with the fart bag, okay, and then he'll let it loose and give some lady a dirty look, and then back out of the elevator, you know, leave her alone. Did to my wife Rosemary.
Oh my
we were
gosh.
in Reno at a Ben Johnson Pro Celebrity Rodeo, and you know, we were on the 10th floor, stopped, people got on the 9th, people got on the 8th, Casey gets on the 7th, doesn't say hello to us at all. By the 6th, he lets that fart bag go and looks at Rosemary, my wife, who's very shy, and says, "Please, lady," and press the button, get off. Of course, everybody else in the elevator is backing up from my wife. Anyway, Madison Square Garden, I think it was 1945. There was a rodeo, and Casey Tibbs was becoming world champion cowboy. Everybody knew who he was. And Roy Rogers was going to be there at halftime. And the gig that Roy Rogers did was they let the spotlight, and ladies and gentlemen, Roy Rogers on trigger, and the spotlight, he'd ride around 2-3 times real fast and faster and wave or whatever. And then in the middle, they'd set up a skeet shoot. Okay? Because Roy was a great shot. Okay, everybody knows, a great hunter.
I used to throw him up for him.
You used to throw him up for him. You didn't this time, though. So Casey knew what Roy Rogers does. So Casey climbs all the way up to the rafters at Madison Square Garden with 2 dead chickens. Roy comes around, waving the crowd. Stop, trigger gets off, spotlight follows him. The announcer says, "And ladies and gentlemen, Roy is going to do some skeet shooting. He's a great shot. Go ahead, Roy." And Roy loads him up, and bang! And here comes these 2 dead chickens with feathers. People down there going, "Oh my God." You know, mothers are putting their hands over their kids' eyes. And Roy looked up, and he knew it was Casey. He knew it was Casey. But being the showman, he just went ahead. The announcer said something about, "Ladies and gentlemen, somebody's playing the practical, don't worry." And then they moved the skeet like over a little bit. Roy finished his act, you know. They brought on trigger, rode around, and they said, I didn't see it. Yeah, of course, I was too young. I just heard the story that Casey took off running, and he went ahead and chased Casey on trigger all through the back there at Madison Square Garden where all the bulls were and the Bronx and everything like that. He was going to kill him. Boy, those were the days. That's great. Don would tell me he wrote with one of my heroes, Ben Johnson.
Oh.
You know, the only actor that ever won a world champion roping, steer roping, and won Academy Award as an actor for Last Picture Show.
Ben was the horseman, the man.
I knew Ben in 44 and 45 and 46 on the rodeo circuit. And I think 46 or 47 is whenever he did his first movie. And then after that, he was more of a movie star well, he still rodeoed, but everybody remembered him as a movie star.
Yeah, he won the world in 1950.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, you used to exercise trigger at Glen Randall's place.
Well, when I lived with the Randalls, we had the stables in back there. So I would exercise triggers, little trigger and big trigger. And then we had 2 little Shetland ponies there that nip and tuck that Roy had a stagecoach. And I drove it in the Christmas parade down Hollywood Square, down Hollywood Boulevard.
You learned a Roman ride on them.
Yeah, and I got paid for exercising, 25 cents a piece a week.
And good money in those days.
Oh, you bet. And so I would take one out. We had a big wash in back, and we could lope up and down through the wash and get them pretty tired pretty quick. And I'd take one out and exercise him, bring him back, get the other one out, exercise him. And I thought in my head, you know, they're used to riding together like this, pulling that wagon all the time. I'll take them both and I'll just stand up on them and exercise them. Well, I did. Well, my dad saw me one day and he thought, well, if I could do that, I could ride big horses like that. So he went out and bought me 2 Palominos. And I started roaming riding that, and then I wound up jumping a car with him. And so that's where I got started with my Roman riding act. But like I say, I was living with the Randalls, so you know, I just did it for something to do. And over on Riverside Drive, I used to exercise. What's the heck's his name now? I can't remember. Lum and Abner, the radio show Lum and Abner.
Mm-hmm.
Lum's horse was there, and Michael O'Shea's horse was there. And I didn't exercise Michael O'Shea's, but I exercised Lum's horse for 25 cents a week, and I'd ride him 3 or 4 days a week. And so that's how I made my movie money, because I'd ride to town on my horse, tie him on to a telephone pole behind the theater, go in and watch the theater, watch the movie, and on 25 cents I could pay for my movie admission, buy me a Coke and a box of popcorn. I met the Sons of the Pioneers, I met all kinds of people that came there, Gabby Hayes, Jingles, what's his name, Andy Devine. And then I went to school with Andy's son, Denny Devine. I watched Glenn train lots of horses. And so I picked up a lot of my training skills from Glenn. And then my dad was an animal trainer, so I picked up a lot of training skills from him.
You also rode Trigger, right?
Well, no, my kid brother.
Your kid brother rode Trigger.
My kid brother, who didn't want to act, would get all the jobs. That's the way it was. I was very, very, very jealous. Well, when he got the Roy Rogers show, I mean, I had to go over on the set. So I went on the set the day that they were actually shooting indoors at the old Goldwyn lot. And I said, I just got to get on the show. So I went into the, I don't know if I could ever do that as an adult, but I went into the production office, and there was a gentleman, God, he must have weighed 300, 400 pounds, his name was Roy Wade, and he was head of production. And I went over and I introduced myself, and I said, my kid brother, Reggie Stevens, is on the show. And he said, oh, and by the way, he did the show where it was Roy Rogers Jr. was on the show, and I forget who the other young actor was. And I said, I got to do this show. And I hand him my resume. I had done a lot of things. I had done early shows, Captain Midnight, Joe Palooka, you know, all those early, wonderful, you know, great early golden age of television. And I said, I'll do anything. I want to do in the show. I'll do one line. I don't care. I want to work with Roy Rogers. About a month later, my agent gets a call that I'm working on the Roy Rogers show. And I thought, well, I got that one line. And I read the script, and the whole story was based on this kid who had all this faith in his father, who was, you know, the sheriff that thought he was a coward. House Peters Jr. did it, and that was in the whole show, and that was the line, it's Waiting Wildcats. So by me going in there and doing that, you know, that's a whole part of my life that, you know, changed.
And you were very lucky because he turned away a whole bunch of people that did the same thing.
Oh, I'm sure. But maybe it's because, you know, I was a kid,
Yeah.
and he liked my moxie, and I did have, you know, here's a young kid showing him all these credits and stuff like that. My brother was already on the show. And it turns out, years later, he winds up being production manager on Zorro that I did, which I didn't realize until, you know, I saw the call sheet, and there his name was, and I went in the office, and I said, you know, I said, Mr. Wade, I said, do you remember me? He says, yeah, that obnoxious kid that forced me into giving him a job. And he gave me a big smile. I says, yeah, I saw your name on the call sheet. You know, glad we worked together.
Well, I heard you earlier telling Don something about a rodeo and a donkey and a bunch of kids chasing a donkey. And what was that? Was that trick about Trigger?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Well,
that was.
Well,
I got to ride Trigger.
Right.
At a rodeo.
That's what
I thought you were talking about within an episode.
No, I was talking about you got to ride Trigger.
No, Madison Square Garden. Let's see. 39, 40, 39. Probably 1947, 48.
Okay.
I was born in 39. Yeah, that would be right. My dad took me to Madison Square Garden to see Roy Rogers. That was like the thing. And it wasn't in conjunction with a rodeo. I don't remember what it was, but Roy Rogers was going to be there. And there again, that was the whole thing of Roy riding around and coming out and the music. And I mean, I just, it's so surreal to think about it today. I mean, it would be like kids, you know, watching Batman or the Minions or something. I mean, it was just,
Roy was huge.
This was Roy Rogers. This was the superhero of all superheroes.
The original action hero.
For me, anyway.
Yeah.
Right? And so they announced that they're going to bring out a little donkey, okay? And they're going to bring it in, and anybody 8 years or younger can go ahead and try to get on and ride this little donkey. And if they do, they'll get to ride on Trigger and ride around the arena with Roy Rogers. I'm jumping over. We were like in the second row, and I'm jumping over, and it was like this far thing. And my dad, you know, tried to catch me, and I could feel him. I don't care, man. I'm in the arena. And I see other kids, you know, coming in under 8, but you know, here they are, you know, 19-year-old kids, and they're coming in, and the donkey comes out, you know, and they all start chasing. And they're chasing this donkey, and Madison Square Garden Arena was like, I mean, I remember, to me, it's like a racetrack, you know, gigantic. And here they're all chasing this donkey, and I can't catch up. I'm just a little kid. And I'm looking, and they're all chasing this donkey, and I look, and I said, wait a minute, what if I just stop and let it come to me? Okay? So I stop, and I'm watching them all chasing this donkey, and they're chasing him, and they're running and trying to catch him. And here this little donkey, probably could have been about that big, and he comes around, and I guess he was shocked to see somebody standing there and not chasing him. No, but they're chasing me. I don't know about this kid here. Stops right in front of me. Just stops. And I just look at him. It's like he was saying, well, get on my back. So I go ahead, and I pull myself up, and I take like 2 steps, and they go, yay, he did it, you know, and then they come out, you know, and they pick me up, and all I can see is my dad way over there wiping his brow. He was so nervous. And now they bring out Trigger, and I got to go ahead and ride around the Trigger, and I got to meet Roy. And
so were you riding with Roy on Trigger?
No,
you were just riding Trigger.
On Trigger, and I was being led by Roy.
Oh,
so we're there together, and I remember pictures were taken. I don't know whatever happened to him. I wish I, you know, had those pictures. So years later, you know, now here I am.
Maybe somebody out there has those pictures. Somebody might have a picture of this.
You never know.
Yeah.
So here I am, years later. I am starring with Roy Rogers on his show. And it took me probably 4 or 5 years later when Roy and I were sitting down, and we sat down on the couch, and I said, I got to tell you this story. And he goes, I don't know any stories. I said, Roy, I got to tell you a Roy Rogers story. He said, I know every Roy Rogers story. There is. Roy, let me tell you a Roy Rogers story. And I told him, and he laughed. But anyway, yeah, it's amazing how what a small world it is, and things happen. But when you were asking me riding Trigger, I thought you were talking about, you know.
Oh no, I just figured. Was that the only time you rode Trigger though?
Yeah.
Was then?
Yeah.
But you were how old? About 7, 8 years old. Yeah. What a thrill for a little kid! Just, you know.
Well, especially when you're going there to see your hero. You know, that would be like today going to see Batman getting to ride in the Batmobile.